We're almost done chapter 1. So 1.1 to 1.4 was all linear equations in one variable. 1.5 and 1.6 was to do with inequalities of linear inequalities, right? And compound inequalities. And then 1.7 is its own little section. So 1.7, we are going to learn to solve absolute value equations. So I thought we would just start with a little bit of like a reminder because not everybody remembers what an absolute value is. So an absolute value is the distance between a number and zero on the number line, regardless of direction. So it's always a positive number. So for example, if I asked you the absolute value of -4, it would be written as the absolute value of -4. So the straight brackets mean absolute value. And if I said how far is -4 from 0 on the number line, you'd say that it's 4 units. It doesn't matter that it's in a negative direction. It is 4 units from 0 on the number line. Just like 4 is also 4 units from 0 on the number line. So let's just practice simply simplifying absolute values. So if I asked you the absolute value of 3, the distance that 3 is from 0 on the number line is 3. The absolute value of -10, -10 is 10 units away from 0 on the number line. So absolute value in a way just makes everything positive. If you have an operation to happen inside of the absolute value brackets, you would do it first. So you would get 3 minus 5 is -2. And then the absolute value of -2 is 2. If you had something like -2 times the absolute value of 4 minus 6, you would think about BEDMAS and you would do the brackets first. These are absolute value brackets. So inside the bracket, we would do 4 minus 6, which is -2. And then just like these other three expressions did, there's this weird thing with absolute values where they have their own operation. So even though we've simplified within the bracket, now the bracket is going to do something. So the absolute value of -2 is 2, and we're going to replace the absolute brackets with round brackets to signify that now I can multiply. Now that I've performed the absolute value, this number is available to multiply. So then we'd get -2 times 2, which would be -4. Okay, so hopefully you have some sort of reminder or understanding of what an absolute value bracket is. And so now we're going to solve absolute value equations. So there's 3 steps. Step number 1 is to be isolating the absolute value. Now we're going to start with questions where we can skip step number 1, but step number 1 is really important on the next page. We're going to move on to step number 2. Step number 2 and 3 are both done to remove the absolute value brackets. Because what happens if you look at an equation like this, these absolute value brackets perform an operation. They make whatever's inside them positive, so they do something. So to undo the absolute value, you have to solve it twice. You're going to solve it once equal to the positive. So you'll say, what would make x minus 4 equal to 5? And then you'd solve it again equal to the negative, and you'd have x minus 4 is equal to -5. So notice when I wrote these two equations, they became linear equations in one variable. I wrote them twice to remove the absolute value brackets. That is the purpose of these 2 steps here. And then I'm just solving. So for this one, I'm going to add 4 to both sides. Sorry, I'm thinking ahead there. Add 4 to both sides, and I end up with x is equal to 9. For this one, I'm going to add 4 to both sides, and I end up with x equals -1. So my solution to this inequality is going to be 2 answers, -1 and 9. What does that mean? Well, it means that if I was to check these 2 solutions, when I plug in x is 9, I get the absolute value of 9 minus 4. Does that equal 5? Checking the left side, the first thing I'm going to do is simplify inside the bracket. 9 minus 4 is 5. The absolute value of 5 is 5. Okay, it worked. When I put in x is 9, I got 5 in here, and then the absolute value of 5 is 5. Can you think about what's going to happen over here? When I plug in -1, I'm going to have -1 minus 4 on the left-hand side. Negative 1 minus 4 is negative 5, but because the equation is making me take the absolute value of 5 is 5. So again, left side equals right side. So this is the weird thing about an absolute value equation, is that you get two solutions that work because the absolute value has this job, right? It turns anything negative positive and keeps positive things positive because it's the distance from 0 on the number line. So now that I've done this one, I want you to pause the video and I want you to try this next one on your own using the example above. Step number 1, isolate the absolute value. Done. So you're moving on to removing the absolute value signs by 1, solving it equal to the positive, and 2, solving it equal to the negative. Okay, go ahead. So I'm going to add 2, I get 1/3 x is equal to 3, and then I'm going to multiply both sides by 3, and I end up with x is equal to 9. If I was to check that, right, let's check it right away. On the left-hand side, I'm taking 1/3 of 9 and minusing 2. Does that equal 1? Well, 1/3 of 9 is 3. 3 minus 2 is 1. The absolute value of 1 is 1. It worked. On this one, I'm going to add 2 to both sides. Oh, I didn't make it equal to negative 1. I'm going to add 2 to both sides. I get 1/3 x is equal to positive 1. I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. I end up with x is equal to 3. So let's check that. Is 1/3 of 3 minus 2, does that equal 1? So remember, you're always checking into the original equation, right? You're putting the absolute value brackets back on, right? And we're performing the operation. So for this one, you'd have 1/3 of 3 is 1. 1 minus 2 is negative 1, but the absolute value of negative 1 is 1. So both of these values of x make my equation true. Awesome. Okay. So, oh yeah, I forgot. I made these videos really short. So now you're going to go and literally just practice that. So when you have an absolute value equal to a number, so just practicing writing it twice, once equal to the positive, once equal to the negative, without the absolute value signs. And that's the important part. When you write it twice, you're performing that absolute value operation. You're removing those brackets, and then you solve and you get two solutions. All right, good luck.